Jesus said, I am the resurrection and I am the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Because I live, you shall live also. Friends, we have gathered here today to praise God and witness to our faith as we celebrate the life of Virginia Sue Harris, known to many of us as Ginger. Ginger was a pillar of this church. And on behalf of this church, I want to extend our condolences to her family. She will be greatly missed. And we come together today in grief, acknowledging our human loss, but we also come together in hope and celebration because Ginger has finished the race, and she is at home with her Lord and her family who are waiting on her. May God grant us grace in this time together today as we celebrate a life that was well lived among us. I invite you now to stand as we sing hymn number 370 in your hymnal, Victory in Jesus. praise you for the great company of all those who have finished their course in faith and now rest from their labors. We praise you for those dear to us whom we name in our hearts before you. Especially we praise you for Ginger, whom you have graciously received into your presence. To all of these, grant your peace. Let perpetual light shine upon them, and help us so to believe where we have not seen, that your presence may lead us through our years, and bring us at last with them into the joy of your home, not made with hands, but eternal in the heavens. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I invite you to recite with me Psalm 23. It's found on page 873 of your hymnal. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Good morning. This is a beautiful sight. I'm really so proud. A few months ago, when Mother was planning this service, she came to us and she said, I know you're going to be sad, but I would like for you to sing in my celebration choir. I said, Mother, I don't know if we can do that. She said, yes, you can. So we printed up what she had sketched out, and every few weeks she'd say, can you print that out for me again? I want to study it. And one night she studied it, and she looked over and she said, it was such a wonderful service. I just wish I could be there. And I said, Mother, you're going to have the best seat in the house. So this is for Mother.
I'm Anne-Marie, the oldest grandchild and only girl. As you can imagine, Grandmother and I had a special bond. As a little girl, I can remember Grandmother being one of the best playmates with a great imagination. Her house was the best place to play dress up, whether I was playing by myself or with one of the boys. Grandmother loved to fuel my imagination and was the first to perform in all of my shows when instructed. She sat through many dance recitals, church performances, and football games watching me cheer. I used to love spending the night at Grandmother and Granddaddy's for the special treatment only grandchildren get, but also for the Stuckey's sausage and biscuit with chocolate milk waiting for me the next day. After Stuckey's closed, we frequented Perfect Pig and Buddy's. She and I shared a love of food, and we didn't miss a meal when we were together. Grandmother was a good shopper, and the best back-to-school shopper I knew. I could count on a full day at the Bellevue Mall when August rolled around. She loved an outfit, complete with shoes and just the right accessories. When I was young and Grandmother would bring me home, she would go on McCrory Lane, and she would say, "I know this road like the back of my hand." But one day she was bringing me home, and we decided to go South Harpeth Road. On the way, we went through a little rainstorm, and on the other side was the most beautiful and vivid rainbow we had ever seen. From that day on, we always took Rainbow Road from her house to mine. Now, once I started driving, Grandmother got awfully bossy in the car. She let you know each time a speed limit changed from one town to the next. Well, because she'd gotten a ticket there. She told you about each upcoming stop sign and the next turn you needed to make, even if you knew right where you were going. She was a backseat driver, always in the front seat. Grandmother loved a good suntan and could get brown as a biscuit. She loved going to the beach, but even when she couldn't get to Florida, the sun on her back porch would do. She loved sitting with her flowers and watching her birds with her sleeves and pant legs rolled up. Just this summer, she wanted to compare suntans, and sure enough, she was tanner than me. Grandmother always wanted to know about everything going on in my life. She had a curious spirit and wasn't afraid to tell you her opinion. No matter the topic, she was always encouraging and telling us to keep working hard. She was a prayer warrior and one of the most godly women I knew. She was a true fisher of men and faithful servant. I've always been envious of her faith and will forever strive to know the Lord the way she did. Grandmother was proud of the community where she lived and grew up. She was proud of her church. She was proud of her children, but she was most proud of her grandchildren. I will miss holidays in her home, her hospitality, the revolving door visitors, and talking to her on the phone. But I'm so thankful for the years we had with her, the graduations she attended, the marriages she witnessed, and the babies she has seen and celebrated. I can only imagine the joyful celebration in heaven the day she was called home, seeing her mother, father, 3 sisters, brother-in-laws, and my granddaddy, in addition to many friends. While she will be missed daily, I celebrate the life she lived and the mark she left on all she knew.
Grandmother was a textbook definition of a Renaissance woman. Singing, dancing, writing, cooking, golfing, fishing, and traveling were some of the many hobbies that she mastered throughout her lifetime. But out of all of her gifts and talents, the one that she perfected most was love. She had passionate affection for her family, especially her husband, her sisters, her daughters, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. She loved her town. And by the way, she was the coolest Grand Marshal ever. She loved her friends, and most importantly, she loved her Lord. On a funnier note, she also loved her TV shows, often staying up late so that she could catch the newest episode of Baggage with Jerry Springer. As I reflect back on the most important things that Grandmother taught me, they are definitely how to intentionally invest in people and to never stop doing the things that bring you joy in life. I can't believe that she sang a church solo a few days prior to her leaving us. Her never-ending encouragement and uplifting attitude are things that I will always remember. I love you, grandmother, and thank you for everything that you taught me.
Grandmother was an amazing woman that had a true love for community, family, and above all, faith. Kingston Springs held a special place in my grandmother's heart, and it holds a special place in mine as well. My trips to grandmother's were spent golfing, fishing, playing in the backyard with my cousins, and splashing in the Harpeth River. Grandmother loved her family with every fiber in her body. There wasn't a single person I met in Kingston Springs that didn't know who I was, who my mom was, and everything that my grandmother had told them about me. Of course, it was harder for her friends to identify her boy grandchildren. Now, is this one of Holly's or is this Jennifer's? Was always the question. No matter who it was, we were her proudest accomplishments and were shown off every Easter Sunday when we would come to sit with her at church. This leads me into grandmother's faith. Grandmother was a true pillar of the United Methodist Church. She always told me that she was praying for me, and a lot of my accomplishments in life, I believe, would not have been fulfilled if I was not in her prayers. Grandmother loved her Lord, and I know is being ushered as a VIP through the pearly gates. I feel lucky to have shared so many milestones in my life with my grandmother. Most of all, I am so happy she got to meet and love on her great-granddaughter, Violet. I only hope that I can share her legacy and teach my daughter how to love your community, family, and faith as much as she did. After every visit, after every holiday, grandmother would kiss me and say, "I love you so much and I am so proud of you." This is what I will remember the most, her unconditional love and support of me throughout my life. Grandmother, I love you too, and I am so proud to be your grandson.
Of all the memories with my grandmother, some of my favorite ones happened within the past year or so. In my 4th year of medical school, I did a rotation for a whole month at St. Thomas in Nashville. And during that time, I stayed at my grandmother's house for that month. And so we were roommates. And so some of my favorite things were just sitting around watching TV with her and just talking about our days together, and then hearing her one-liners as she watched Hallmark movies with me, watched her favorite TV show, Family Feud, and just getting to talk about the exciting things coming up, getting married to my wife, Rebecca, graduating medical school, moving to Louisville. And she was just always really interested in my day and what I did, and then what was going to be happening with this next year of residency starting and all that. And those are just things that I'm going to miss, just how intentional she was, and then how funny she also was when it came to her TV shows that she watched like clockwork. And that month that I spent with her, living at her house with her and being her roommate, is just something that I'm really going to cherish and remember looking forward.
I remember as a child, I would always have fun visiting my grandmother, whether that be due to trips to the mall, pet stores, or my favorite, fishing trips to the park with her and Peggy. We would go to the park fishing almost every time I visited during the summer. We would sit in the same spot in the same old lawn chairs each time. We never really caught that many fish, yet we continued to go to the park. During those times, I thought it was the fishing that mattered the most. But now, looking back, it was the time spent bonding with my grandmother that mattered. We would sit and talk, and any time the subject of school came up, she was quick to remind me that she was valedictorian of her class.
Grandmommy. Ever since I can remember, she has been my biggest fan in whatever I'm doing. I remember us playing ping pong or just watching Family Feud. We would go down to the creek and fish or feed the ducks. I can still hear her saying, "Boy, take that hat off, it's going to make you bald." She would always ask me how I was doing in school. When I'd tell her that I had all A's, she would say, "Well, you get it from your grandmother." I would always look forward to fall breaks during my middle school days, but not because it was a break from school. It meant that I would get to go to the beach with my grandmommy and Becker. Most teens only get to go on one senior trip, but every fall break for me was a senior trip. I never looked forward to coming to her house for Easter and Christmas because it was like a break from all of the bad in the world. Everything was as it should be when our family was together. She would always write us poems for Christmas, and when we would go to church for Easter, she would show us off to everyone as if we were the best people in the whole world. It didn't take a rocket scientist to see how many people she's impacted in her life. I'm not ashamed to say this, but my grandmother has more friends than myself and probably my brothers combined. She has never met a stranger. I can still recall her saying, "How to do," to every baby or child she saw. Words don't do justice to the memories and fun times myself, and I'm sure every one of us have had with my grandmother. She was witty, stubborn, but most importantly, loving. I never once doubted that she loved me or any of my brothers or cousins. She will be deeply missed, but I know a person with her faith and heart is in heaven dancing with my grandfather. In closing, one of the things that she said when her life was fading was that she was only here for vacation, and her home was already made with the Lord. I'm glad she is finally home.
I decided if I could get up here. You all that don't know me, I'm Randy Martin. Ginger is my aunt. My mother, Marie, was the oldest of the 4 siblings. And it's a pleasure to be here. Jesus did us and the disciples a great service when on the night before he was betrayed, he met with the disciples in the upper room. And he said a lot of things to them that night. But one of the things that he said to them that not only was for their benefit, but for ours, is when he anticipated their grief. He knew that they knew that he was something about to happen. And he knew that the appropriate response to whatever was going to happen was grief. And so he said this, it's recorded in the 14th chapter of John. He said, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go prepare a place for you? And when I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you may be also." Then he goes on to say, "My peace I give unto you, not as the world give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." And over the years of my life and my ministry and everything else, I can't find a better description for grief than a troubled heart. Just something that goes to the depth of our being. And that's what grief is. So when we come to a time like this, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? And I always remember 3 things. We have a memory to preserve, a ministry to perform, and a message to proclaim. Remember me. Remembrance and memory are just part of our spiritual journey. And today, we remember a life well lived in Ginger Harris. For me, I'm getting ready to retire in June after 49 years of being a Methodist preacher. And my faith journey began right over there, not on that pew, there were some more pews there, on that pew right over there, or if I was acting up in the choir loft with Grandma. And it's hard to talk about individuals within that kind of system, because when you talk about one of the Lincoln girls, you're really talking about them all. And for me, the symbol of our connectedness, because we were always the family of the way. Everybody else over here, every time somebody got a stomachache, they got together and took care of one another. And then we'd hear about sometime over in Chattanooga. But the symbol for me, the other day I was in a thing and somebody's leading us in one of these meditative things that oftentimes I don't really appreciate, but this time I did, because it's after I heard about this. And they said, go to your special place, your peace place. You know what my peace place is? Grandmother's porch swing. His granddaddy's too, but we know who was in charge. Grandmother's porch swing. My brother and I have talked about that sometime there may be a book in it somewhere, and the title's going to be Lessons Learned from Grandmother's Porch Swing. And that's my happy place. And you know why? Because it gives me a sense of connectedness. Every one of my aunts, including my mother too, we sat in that porch swing. Tanya would take us all around the world. We porch swing. Becker told me about the time she fell in the swing and she bit her tongue, showing me the scar in her tongue when she fell and hit her tongue. Ginger would sit there and would talk about sports I was playing, or something. Son, grandmother, granddaddy. I sat there with all three of my children. And there's a sense of connectedness. But the greatest connectedness for me with Ginger and the family is what I call hand-me-down faith. Paul talks about it in 1 Timothy when he's writing to his young helper, Timothy. And he says to his young helper, the Apostle Paul says, Timothy, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, which resided first with your grandmother, and then your mother, and now with you. If faith is to be faith, it needs to be hand-me-down. You ever worn hand-me-down clothes? The hand-me-down faith that I've received, beginning my faith journey here, was the kind of faith that, you know, sometimes we get hand-me-down clothes that maybe fit just right. But in a little while, you outgrow it. Some of the hand-me-downs we may have received in the past, maybe those are too strong and don't fit right, and we get rid of them. But you know the best hand-me-downs are the ones we can grow into. I remember Mom used to buy jeans too long, and she'd roll them up to my knees because I would grow into them. That's the kind of faith that we have received from our grandmother, from our mothers, and now abides in us, and we pass it on to ours. So the question today for us is what's going to be our legacy? There was a book years ago, I don't remember anything about the book except the title. And the title was, Will Our Children Have Faith? Now we know they're going to have a good education. We know that some of them are going to be good athletes. We know that we're going to try to have them be good dancers or performers or something. We put a lot of time in it. But the question is, will our children have faith? And Ginger took that seriously. Mom took that seriously. Tina took that seriously. Rebecca took that seriously. Grandmother and granddad took that seriously. So what's our legacy going to be? You see, the thing we always have to figure out is who we're going to be by who we love, what we can do, and where we are going. And the faith that has been handed down to us is such a good fit that we can grow into it and know that who we are isn't who we're going to be. And our faith journey is a lifelong process. So today, I'm not thinking about pearly gates and golden streets. I'm thinking about memories of sitting on the porch. Granddad telling stories about how he used to like to get an orange for Christmas. And all of them sitting there, me trying to get in the porch swing, And we gathered around, realizing that the circle has not been broken, and that our faith is such that we're a resurrection people, that because Jesus lives, we can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because we know he holds the future, and life is worth the living because he lives. Amen. In 1920, Ernest Lampley married Hazel Jameson and brought her to live in the house that he built next door to his mother and father here in Kingston Springs. Up on Maple Drive, the house that Mayor Tony Gross now lives in, he was reminding me this morning that next year will be the 100th anniversary of that house being built. So in many ways, as today we say goodbye to Ginger, this is almost a century of the Lampley family. I've entitled my talk, The Lampley Girls and Me. And it'll be clear in just a minute. Ernest and Hazel moved here in 1920. In 1923, the first of the girls, my mother, Marie, was born, followed by Ernestine, known as Teeny, Rebecca, known as Becker, and Ginger in 1928. Come to think of it, that was a lot of girls real quick. Ernest and his father owned a timber business that went bust in the Great Depression. Ernest worked at odd jobs, any labor that would pay him, that he could put food on the table for his family. In 1941, when I was born, he had begun working as a railroad crosstie buyer, which was a career that he pursued for the rest of his life, into his 70s. Now, my mother and biological father divorced when I was an infant, and we came to live with her parents, her grandmother, and her 3 sisters. Ginger was 12 when I showed up, and that's why she and Becca, who are 2 years older, were more like older sisters to me than aunts. They told me that they used to fight over who would change my diaper. In fact, Ginger told me the last time I was visiting her about a month ago that they used to fight over changing my diaper. They also broke my ankle. They were pushing me on a bicycle when I was an infant, and my foot got caught in the spokes. I never heard what grandmother did to him about that, but when the man who was to become my dad came home from the war and was dating my mom, Ginger taught me to whistle. One day when they were courting in the parlor, Ginger and I were in the room next door, and the little room next door spying on him. And when my dad kissed my mom, I jumped out and whistled. Ginger got caught because she was giggling so loud. She also taught me to dance. You can see the results on the back of the bulletin when she and I were dancing at Alex's wedding. The other 3 girls went to White Bluff to high school, but Ginger ended up going to Bellevue. I never did know why. But I do remember going to see her in school plays, watching her play basketball, and she was a scrappy ball player. I'm sure any of you would know because she was scrappy right up to the end. Hazel and Ernest Lampley instilled in their 4 daughters and me a strong work ethic, a desire to do our best in anything that we did, a sense of civic duty, and a love for God, for family, and for our neighbors. Hazel taught with words, Ernest by example. All 4 girls were valedictorians, as not just Ginger, but the other 3 as well. They went on to have responsible jobs and marry good men. Ginger became a buyer for Loveman's department store for many years. She married the son of the local doctor who had delivered all 4 girls. Robert was a postmaster here in Kingston Springs for many years. Ginger kept the books for the water district. They loved this town, and they loved the people here. Ginger had one characteristic that endeared her to me, and as I listened to the grandchildren's comments, I'm sure it endeared her to them and to all of you as well. She was genuinely interested in whatever you were telling her, and she made you feel interesting and valuable and important to her. She also liked a good joke. I am so proud of my older sister and her wonderful life. I will always love her. I will miss her.
I invite you to stand as we sing hymn number 707, Hymn of Promise.
Hearing those stories of the house, that was really special. I could see all the rooms, and I could almost picture young Miss Ginger, when she, and the stories you told, and just so special, because I know exactly the spot you were talking about, and it's such a special place, and it's one of those things, we feel so blessed that we got to raise our family there, my wife and I, and you always think when, someone who lived such a full life as Miss Ginger did, when you get the call that she's passed away, that, there'd be some expectation to it, but there wasn't when we got that call last week. We were driving, it was, all three of us in the car, and I said it to Joy, because I got the call, and we just all burst into tears. We just couldn't believe she was gone, because she was such a special person. The last time I really spent an extended period of time with her was at the Christmas parade last year, and I had a little bit of a cold. She was so excited to be there, and I was like, oh, I don't want to pass this cold on Miss Ginger, because, that would be an awful thing to do. But she came up, of course, and gave me a big hug, and we rode through that parade together, and everybody was there, smiling and waving to her, and so excited to see her. And the reason why, as you can see today, is because she was the epitome of Kingston Springs. She was a very special person in Kingston Springs. Everything about her exuded being, a sense of welcoming. She lived here nearly 91 years. It's a long time. But something that I reflected on when I thought about her this past week was the fact that she lived here 91 years. I've only lived here 20 years. And I think many of us have lived here, more or less. I don't think any one of us in this room has lived here as long as she did. But whenever she met you, if you were here a week or you lived here your whole life, she treated you with respect. She loved you, she loved the community, and she welcomed you into this community. And for those reasons, it's a tough day to see her gone. And my final thought on it is just this: Kingston Springs is never going to be the same without Miss Ginger. She was so special, and we're just never going to have anybody that replaces her. But one thing we can all take heart in is the fact that Kingston Springs is a way better place because she lived in Kingston Springs, and she touched all of our hearts. Amen.
Hello, my name is Leslie Allen, and I grew up in Kingston Springs. My mom and Ginger have been friends for 61 years, and Jennifer and I grew up together. So Miss Ginger has been a big part of my life from day one. From a kid's perspective, Miss Ginger ran a tight ship. She had high expectations of Jennifer and Holly. Over the years, I learned so much from Miss Ginger. She greatly influenced my life, as you can see, so many others too. I think in large part it is because she and her sisters, Rebecca, Teeny, and Marie, had great parents. Ernest and Hazel Lampley. I sort of think of this as the Lampley legacy. And what is that? First of all, I did not talk to Randy or Bob before I wrote this, so you can tell this is just from the heart. This is what everyone will know who knows them. Ginger raised her children to know the Lord. She brought Holly and Jennifer to church every Sunday that they were not sick until the day they moved out. But when they moved out, I'm sure she called them to make sure they were attending church. Because she knew someday she would not be here to give them advice. And they would need to have the best guide ever to know right from wrong and what to do in a tough situation. Ginger was involved. She organized Halloween parties, carnival fundraisers, Christmas caroling, talent shows, and drove her kids to countless basketball games and competitions. She got up early and stayed late to put on the annual Kingston Springs 4th of July event. And she contributed to countless town hall and community club meetings, church, utility district, and historical association meetings and events. Ginger got involved because she not only wanted, but expected to have a voice at the table. And she had smart ideas to share. And typically, we came around her way of thinking. So Ginger was a champion. Whether it was sports, a card game, UMW talent show, or even a baby shower word game, Miss Ginger was competitive and loved to win. She understood that winning gives you a sense of accomplishment, and when you don't win, it teaches you to be more prepared the next time. So one of her lessons is whatever you do in life, be prepared. Practice that golf swing. Layup, recital, rewrite that speech, thesis, or assignment, and bring home the trophy, the ribbon, the A, the valedictorian, the scholastic merit. Look at all these boys. And girls. How talented they are and how they have been successful. Because that is what Miss Ginger would do. Be present. Ginger took time to get to know people. She visited you in your home. Maybe you were sick or maybe you were new to this little town we call home. But regardless, even though she worked a full-time job, had 2 kids to raise and a husband, she took time to visit and just sit a spell. She had a 6th sense about what you were going through. With all we have going on today, let's not forget the value of just visiting with someone to hear about their day. And prayer. Ginger had a way of praying that was so simple and sweet. She was heartfelt, honest, and direct with her prayers to God. There was no pretense. It was simply Ginger talking to God and knowing that God was nearby and listening. I promised Ginger I would cry. And when Ginger talked, most people listened. What'd you say? And I felt God was listening too, which made her prayers powerful. So in closing, whenever we're struggling in life, or simply need a little help working through a thorny problem, take a moment and think. Ginger has already given us the road. Now, all we have to do is to remember, what would Ginger do? Thank you.
Okay, so here's the good news. Almost everything I was going to say has already been said. I think that it's yeah, be adjourned. I think that it's an affirmation though that all of the things that you all have felt, all the things that you've known about your mom, is the same things that everybody else knew about your mom. I think that that's very, very powerful. I got to be Ginger's pastor for a few years, and we spent enough time together to really get to know each other, I think. I recall when we discussed the passage that is at the end of the book of Proverbs on a Wednesday night Bible study, that she responded actually more aggressively than usual, because she seemed to really know this text very well, as though she was trying to live it. This is the text that begins in the 31st chapter of Proverbs, in the 10th verse, where it says in the King James, it says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is above all rubies." She was a virtuous woman. And I believe that she took this passage out of the Bible that speaks of the epitome of being a woman in the Hebrew life. I think that she took that to heart. I want to read you a part of it beginning at the 25th verse and going to the end of that book. "She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come, no matter what they are going to bring. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate." Today we honor Ginger Harris. She had works in her life that brought her to the gate of this community. She was known throughout the community, but now the works of her life have taken her through the very gates of heaven. When Ginger's daughter, Holly, heard that she had passed away, Holly was in Memphis, and she raced, literally raced, back to Kingston Springs to be here at the site. Passing time as she traveled, she thought about how she was going to describe her mother to others. She began to organize her thoughts around a David Letterman-ish top 10 list, kind of a countdown of the things that Ginger loved. Now, this all happened actually before she got the speeding ticket, because all creativity ended right about there. But I've used Holly's list, filled in a little bit with the memories that Jennifer and Holly shared with me to help us to remember Ginger today. Now, I am going to be kind of sliding through this quickly because you really have heard many of the things that they shared with me, because these grandchildren knew their grandmother well. These nephews knew their aunt well. The number 10 thing that Ginger loved was the Vandy Commodore basketball team and the Titans football team. She would sit in her recliner and she would yell her cheers at the TV set. She had other favorite teams, and those usually included things that her family or her friends were involved in. Not always actually sports. She actually loved the competition. And she can make competition out of anything. That's already, I think that Leslie said something about that. She was a very competitive person herself. Now, I didn't realize that at first until I was in several meetings with her and began to realize that every discussion, if there was a difference of opinions, became a competition of sorts. Now, it wasn't bad. She wasn't mean-spirited. She, actually, when I looked at the picture on the back of the folder, of the program folder, I was thinking about that's the same smile that she usually had when she won. The same smile that she did when she was dancing. It was really good. But whether it was a late-night bridge game in her living room with Jane Hyatt and Helene Lyles, or a game of tennis out on the community tennis courts with her husband Robert, or whether it was a game of horse in the backyard on the basketball goal with her daughters, or maybe even that ping pong game that we saw on the screen a while ago. She always wanted to win. She was kind of like my wife. She always kind of in her side, she wanted to let the underdog win a little bit, but when it came down to the final point, she had to have it. She always pushed for the best. I think that the fact that her older sisters all had been valedictorian, I think that there was no way that she was not going to be valedictorian. Now, I'm not saying she cheated, but I'm saying she was a lifelong learner. She impressed upon her daughters what it meant to excel in the classroom and also throughout the rest of their lives, and they have taken that on. Now, her competitive spirit seems to have extended to her politics as well. Some of you would call her a yeller dog Democrat, yeah, which made for some interesting Bible studies back here, because we had some folks that were not anywhere close to a Democrat, much less a yeller dog. She loved being involved in the local politics, and she loved politicking for her favorite candidates. Now, this came out in a story that her daughters told me about when they went on a trip to Panama City, and her companions, she and her companions saw Donald Trump's airplane parked on the tarmac, and they discovered that he was having a big rally there at Pier Park. She declared, "Well, I'm not going to a Trump rally." Her companions on the trip said, "Yes, we are. You can just sit in the car if you don't want to come inside," and that's exactly what she did. she won that battle, but I think she lost that big fight. Number 9 on Holly's list. Ginger loved her TV shows. Wheel of Fortune, Family Feud, America Says. Being a romantic, she also loved some other shows like The Bachelor and you know, some of those other things. I think that Baggage was the one that surprised me the most. And then there were the Hallmark movies as well. I know that Holly said that she was labored to have to sit through watching The View with Ginger whenever she came up here to be with her. Number 8. Ginger loved trips to Waffle House, Wendell Smith's, and Old Charlie. Now I worried when they closed the McDonald's in Kingston Springs because I was afraid that she was not going to live through that. But she seems to have done pretty well without it, and she found other people who would take her to other places where she could enjoy some of her indulgences. Number 7. Ginger loved trips to Panama City Beach with her sister Becker. Rhymes with Ginger. Went every year. There was a pool party at the same trip that the Trump rally was, and Ginger and Becker danced to YMCA with all the moves. Yeah, all the moves. It was Western night, and of course Ginger had packed a costume for that occasion too. She was always prepared. She was always on hand. Before she loved Panama City Beach, Ginger loved trips to Key Largo with her husband Robert and her sisters and their husbands. She was the life of the party with karaoke and water aerobics. She seemed never to be afraid to try something new, and she was always that way with us too. I mean, that's the way she was in our community. Number 6. Now I changed your number in a little bit here. Ginger loved music. She came from a musical family, and the girls remembered Sunday afternoons that consisted of a lunch with roast and potatoes at their grandmother's house, probably the same grandmother where the swing was on the porch, and that was followed by a sing-along in the parlor around the piano. Ginger grew up singing in the church choir, sitting right here in this choir loft, and so she did that well into her retirement years. She especially loved karaoke, and she kept a copy of Patsy Cline's Crazy lyrics in her purse all the time because you never knew when something was going to opportunity was going to arrive, and she was going to be able to use that. During this past year, Jennifer's most treasured memory is singing with her mother in the car whenever they were traveling. They'd pull up Southern Gospel Channel on Pandora, and then they'd sing and harmonize all down the road. Now, I can imagine sitting by a traffic light and hearing that coming out of that car sounding just like you guys did. Oh, my God. Amazing. Just amazing. Ginger really loved the musicians at Kingston Springs. Really loved the musicians. She seemed to breathe in life through the tunes that these talented musicians brought to her through the years. Many of you all are those musicians, and some of them are new, but she enjoyed you just as much last week on the TV as she always has, being right back there in that pew. Perhaps the last memory of Ginger that many in this church will have is just a few weeks ago when she stood right here and sang a solo for this congregation. Number 5, Ginger loved her friends, and this room is full of them. Her doors were always open to her friends for a cup of coffee or a card game or just time for some conversation. Ginger was the queen of hospitality, and her husband Robert was the king of humor and wit. Together, they were an irresistible duo. Their home was filled daily with friends and conversation and laughter. I mean, they were located right there on the main drag, and so it was easy and a convenient stop for people to drop by and just come in for a short visit, or sometimes a long visit. Jennifer remembers that dinner times were rarely just for their family. When friends stopped in, Ginger would say, "How do you do?" Have a seat and eat with us. She treasured her lifelong friendship with Helen Lyles as well as with new friends, Nicole and Evan. She and Robert always enjoyed their Friday night dinners with Marvin and Dorothy. And then later on, she enjoyed them with Edna Powers, who couldn't be here with us today. She loved visits from Mike and Pam and Bob and Vicki and Carl, and she loved the daily visits with Dale Baker. Together, Ginger and Robert taught their family all about hospitality. I mean, the whole family. What you all know has been handed down. It's one of those legacy things. The hospitality and the value of friendships and the special open door experience of a small town. That was all there, and we who have gathered here today have all experienced this family legacy in some way. Number 4, Ginger loved Kingston Springs, and you know that. This was her home, her extended family, her church, her very life was Kingston Springs. The girls begged her to live with one of them after Robert passed away, but she refused to leave Kingston Springs. And so, I'm so glad that they were to accommodate her so that she could live out her days in her home, attended by her girls, and holding court down there in her living room for all of those who dropped by. And she'd say, "How do you do?" Number 3, Ginger loved her church. It was the place that she was baptized and grew up to approach discipleship with the same kind of vigor that her father had had. She served as a Sunday school teacher, held pretty much every office in the church at one time or another, and sang in the choir for 50 plus years. Ginger was loyal to every preacher. Now, every preacher who's been here, Ginger was loyal to them. The church was not an option for her family. That's already been mentioned. Other families could have the sniffles and miss church. Not Ginger's family. She was the spiritual leader of their home. The girls learned by her teaching, but also by her example. They were raised to be strong women just the way she was. They were filled with their mother's positivity and optimism. She showed them how not to accept feeling sorry for oneself, nor looking back. Even after Robert's death, she missed him so much, but never let her sorrow affect her attitude and her outlook on life. She was independent and not afraid to express her ideas and her opinions, right or wrong. I told you she was competitive. She was right. Jennifer describes Ginger as one of the steel magnolias of Kingston Springs, along with Jane Hyatt, Hallie Lyles, and Peggy B. Ginger taught her daughters and so many other people about Christian discipleship by her actions. She was taking meals to shut-ins long before Meals on Wheels was ever organized. She ministered to those who needed a listening ear, often before the pastor ever heard about it. She was faithful in her tithe and offerings. She was faithful in her study and her Bible. The girls saw her reading the Bible several times each day. In fact, her Bible is literally worn out from use. How many of us can say that? She was faithful in her attendance and commitments to the church. And on family vacation, she would even drag the family to the nearest Methodist church after she figured out where it was. Ginger really was the virtuous woman that I read about from Proverbs just a few minutes ago. Number 2, we're getting there, folks. Ginger loved her family. Now, you saw the video. You know how much she loved this family. She was so proud of this family. She always talked about them, and it wasn't just Easter. She was proud of you guys all the time. Talked about you all the time. She couldn't keep your name straight, but she talked about you. She attended every graduation, every wedding. She went to every rehearsal dinner with a poem that she had composed to be read during the toasts. Every member of her growing family was important to her, and that meant the children and the grandchildren and the people that they loved as well, all part of her growing family. Now, number one, you already know. Ginger loved Jesus. Ginger lived for Jesus. At every age in her life, she felt like that God could use her, up until that last musical solo 3 weeks ago in this church. She felt like that we never outgrew God's call in our lives. She never gave up on being healed. Upon being diagnosed with cancer at age 89, she was given the option of possibly not taking chemo or radiation. She said, "Why would I not take treatments? I want to live." And live she did. Her faith in Jesus kept her alive a year beyond the doctor's expectations. And what a year this has been. What a year it's been. She's had opportunities to sing crazy. She was the first grand marshal ever in the local Christmas parade. She enjoyed scallops and oysters in Panama City on the last trip that the girls would make with her to Panama City. She enjoyed another year of simple things like going for rides, watching the birds, enjoying the beautiful flowers, and watching sunsets. It's already been said that Ginger was the family prayer warrior, although she really did have trouble telling people which child did this or that. She was always talking to them, and at night when she said her prayers, she could name each one of them as she talked with Jesus. Now we know that Ginger had a personal and up-close relationship with God, because as the girls were trying to make the house safe for her, they had cameras and microphones installed so they could keep an eye on her for her safety. And they discovered that each night before she fell asleep, she talked with God. Now, not like some of us do under her breath or in her mind. She talked out loud with God every night and prayed beautiful prayers. And each night, as they were looking at her bedtime talks with God, they heard her speaking those beautiful prayers to God. And she didn't confuse the names of her loved ones. Her requests were clear, they were exact, and they were unconfused. Now, Ginger taught her family and her friends to love unconditionally. She loved as Jesus loved, without regard for a person's race, or their status in life, or their denomination, or even whether they were a part of her political party or not. She loved. She loved people with the love of God. And she showed us all how to be disciples, fishers of men, as already mentioned, just as Jesus commanded. She was a primary recruiter for God and for the Kingston Springs United Methodist Church. Countless people who walked through those back doors for the first time encountered her high-do and her encouragement and her example, and came back and became a part of this church. And I believe that was through her touch. Because when she touched people, they were touched by the almighty hand of God. We felt that. We know that. In a number of our Bible studies and the Sunday school class discussions and even in casual conversations, Ginger quoted statements of faith from the Apostles' Creed. Now, she didn't do them in a preachy kind of way. She just did them in an affirming kind of way to say, this is what I believe. If you've got a hymnal handy, I'd like to ask you to turn to page 881. It's way back near the end of the hymnal, 881. Now, while you're looking for that, I want to say that Ginger would have probably first memorized this creed at about age 12 or maybe even a little bit younger, as she prepared for confirmation as a full member of the church. She never needed to look in the book to see what it was. I have to look in the book because I never really memorized it. That wasn't my thing. Well, what I'd like to do, if you're willing, I'd like to ask you to participate with me in this reading of this historic creed that Ginger believes so firmly. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. The third day he rose from the dead. He ascended into heaven, and sitteth at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. From thence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. Ginger loved music, and when she heard this rousing choir presentation on July the 4th, she requested that it be sung at her funeral. She didn't want us to be sad, she wanted us to be glad.
And I told Ginger, there's no way, because we don't know who's gonna be in town, we don't have May here to play, we can have, but I figured, well, I knew that no was not an answer. By the way, I've never heard anything so beautiful as you two girls singing like that. But But as you can see, it's a pretty little group for a church this size. We've never had a choir practice this past Wednesday as big as we had last Wednesday. It's for Ginger, and she was, I've only been here 4 years, but she was so sweet to me. And, you know, Mary can really play the piano, and I like to play the piano. Ginger would just come right after the service and say, what was that prelude you played? I love that prelude. You sound so good. So we're gonna do it now.
We pray to you for one another in our need, for all and anywhere who mourn with us this day. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, give strength. To those who have sinned, give mercy. To all who sorrow, give your peace. Keep true in us the love with which we hold one another. In all our ways we trust you, and to you with your church on earth and in heaven, we offer honor and glory now and forever. Oh God, all that you have given us is yours. As first you gave Ginger to us, now we give Ginger back to you. Lord, into your hands, O merciful Savior, we commend your servant Ginger. Acknowledge, we humbly beseech you, a sheep of your own fold, a lamb of your own flock, a faithful disciple of Jesus, and a Christian friend to everyone who came her way. As she comes to your gates and greeted you with her familiar hi-do, we pray that you will greet her saying, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Lord, receive Ginger into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the glorious company of the saints of light. God of love, we thank you for all with which you have blessed us, even to this day, for the gift of joy in the days of health and strength, and for the gifts of your abiding presence and promise in days of pain and grief. We praise you for home and friends, and for our baptism and place in your church, with all who have faithfully lived and died. Above all else, we thank you for Jesus, who knew our griefs, who died our death, and rose for our sake, who lives and prays for us. Now hear us as we pray the prayer that Jesus taught. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
You all are going to really hear a song this morning. It's called an evening prayer. And I think that what the author did, that he was trying to say that every day we should go over the day and see if we've hurt anyone's feelings, or if we've done everything we should do that day. And if not, ask forgiveness. And I think he did that. So you can listen to the words. If I have wounded any soul,
this has been a testament to a life well lived among us. Amen.
Amen.
The family would like to invite you to a meal following the service in the fellowship hall, and you can exit these two doors and you'll be in the fellowship hall. We have a tradition here where we sing a benediction song every Sunday after worship, and it is a song that actually Jennifer brought to our church so many years ago, and it has been a tradition here ever since. So we're going to sing that song here in a few minutes. The words are printed in your worship folder. But before we do, we'll receive the dismissal with blessing. And if you are in the aisle, we would ask that you would please clear the aisle because we'll be processing out after we sing our song together. Hear the dismissal and blessing. The peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God. And the blessing of God, our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, be among you and remain with you always. Amen. I invite you to stand, and we join hands as we sing this song, so if you would like to take the hand of the person next to you as we sing.
Gentlemen, before we do dismiss, I would like to thank each and every one of you on behalf of the family for coming out today. And I ask that you keep the family in your thoughts and prayers, not only in the days and weeks to come, but the months and years when your thoughts and prayer will be most needed. And family, we thank you for entrusting Dixon Funeral Home with your loved ones today. And I don't normally say this, but I have to say that the choir was fantastic. Miss Virginia's little video was amazing. And Holly and Jennifer did a phenomenal job singing up there. I was flabbergasted hearing those two sing. So that's all I have.